Joining us live via Skype is over Skype, excuse me, is economic expert Steve Keen. Steve, thank you for joining us today. Now, to what extent will Switzerland's move to unpeg itself from the euro affect Denmark?
Well, Denmark has had its peg for something like 60 or 70 years. It's pegged itself to the predominant European currency, whatever that might have been. And just doing it with the euros, it's done it from the inception of the euro. So I don't think it's anything like the Swiss situation, which was done after the financial crisis began, and where the scale of money flowing into Switzerland and the scale of Switzerland's own foreign exchange market was so great that finally the Swiss decided to give way. I think the Danes will hold the line, but what this is really showing is the sheer sense of turmoil in currency markets, because the euro itself is massively overvalued given the fragility of the system it holds together, and everybody's waiting for someone to break out of it. And I think that's what's really going on here. It's like most divorces, it ends up being very messy, and the Swiss were the surprise party to first leave the association.
Now, how will Denmark alleviate the speculation on the future of their currency? You mentioned the fragility of the system and people wanting to step out of it. You know, what will the story be? What should we expect to see in the coming days?
Well, I think it's what's going to happen in Greece on Sunday that matters more than what's happening in Denmark, because the odds are that when Syriza wins the election, highly likely to do so, it will draw the line under the austerity policies the European Union and the ECB have foolishly imposed upon Europe. And at that stage, the discussion will come down to whether the euro is going to survive. So the breaking of the Swiss euro link, I think, was the first chain in the possibility that the euro itself will finally fold, as it should do. So I think it's more that this is just the ramifications from the first move. Quite everybody was surprised that it happened in Switzerland, of course, but it's a sign of how fragile the euro really is.
Now, there is speculation that the ECB will introduce quantitative easing. How likely is this to happen, and how much more?
I think it's absolutely guaranteed they will. But again, people should ask, how effective has QE been in America and England? Given the scale of money that's gone into the American economy for QE, it has helped the economy drop out of its slump, but mainly by inflating asset prices. And it's done very little for the real economy. It's a very expensive way to have a small impact. And I think it's a pity that the European Central Bank is going to be as unimaginative as the Federal Reserve was by trying to rescue the financial sector rather than putting its efforts where it should be, into the real economy.
How much more pressure do you think that this will impose on Denmark's central bank?
Well, Denmark is small enough not to have to worry about it. It was the size of Switzerland, about roughly 5% of the international foreign exchange markets, that made it so vulnerable. I'm taking a guess here, but I don't think that the Danish are going to be worried. They'll keep on doing what they've been doing, and they've got a history of maintaining it, from the very birth of the euro. I think they'll be there to the end of the euro, but I don't think that's going to be all that far in the distance now.
You've mentioned the size of Denmark in relation to Switzerland, and said obviously it's much smaller, but the appreciation of the Danish krone will still detrimentally affect its economy. If quantitative easing is introduced, how much of an increase will it have?
Again, I don't think it'll have a great deal. It's something that the Danes can manage at the scale of their economy. That the Swiss couldn't, with the sheer volume of money coming in, and the fact that Switzerland's always been an open money country. Of course, Switzerland's being the place of choice to put your money if you don't want people to know where it is. That makes it much more exposed than Denmark, that doesn't have that same institutional structure to its banking system. So I think it's a sign of how worried speculators are, because so many got wiped out by this move by the Swiss central bank. And the fact that we're talking about Denmark, I think, is a sign more of panic in foreign exchange traders than it is problems for the Danish economy.
Professor Steve Keen, economic expert, thank you very much for joining us today.